And we should be live. Hello, everybody. Happy Tuesday and welcome to Branch of Laurels interview. My name is Lochac. I'm from Ontario, and tonight my guest is Ianto van Diemen from Lochac. And
good afternoon.
Good afternoon and welcome. Thank you for your time. Please take us on your journey. What's your SCA origin story?
Well, if you'll indulge me, I would like to first make an acknowledgement of country, just a short statement. I would like to acknowledge the First Nations people of the traditional owners of the land from which I join you today. This is Mead, Brisbane. I recognise the country north and south of the Brisbane River as the home of both the Turrbal and Jagera nations. I pay deep respects to all elders, past, present, and future.
And
thank you.
Thank you. And I would follow that up with, I am on Cowlitz land that was stolen by executive order under President Lincoln's tenure. So there we are. That's taken care of.
So with regard to an origin story, it's probably worth noting that even as a sort of a young fellow, I was very much into the science fiction, fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons, all that kind of thing. And I had sort of a keen interest in dressing up and up to and including the point that I had made myself chainmail already. I didn't know the SCA existed, and I went and made it. And in that world of, he makes things, he dresses up, the question obviously is how did, oh, that's going to do funny things, isn't it? How did this young man, it's not going to play ball. End up here.
So is that a ray gun in your hand?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, I made that. So test tubes filled with silver and gold paint glued onto a toy gun. Yeah. Pretty crazy, really. So
it's wonderful.
Yeah. The belt that I'm wearing has seen action in World War II. It was my grandfather's. So you sort of just, I cobbled together whatever I could, really. So so there you go.
You were definitely meant for the SCA.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. So in terms of an origin story, when I was a young man, I was brought up in the state of Tasmania, and in that area, sort of I studied there and travelled there. But at the end of my university tenure, I was actually in my last year of university working full time, and the company that I was working with said, "We're going to Melbourne," and Australians are not afraid of just upping sticks for work or for pleasure or whatever and go a different place. So I went to Melbourne, and in Melbourne, lots of fun, lots of fun. But I mean, the series of accommodations I went to, just bizarre. So at first, my mother, bless her heart, found me accommodation with two elderly ladies via her works chaplain. And I went on my motorcycle with all my worldly belongings on the ferry to Melbourne and went to stay with these old ladies. Now, bathroom in the kitchen, oh my God, it was bizarre. So I quickly tried to find other accommodation. So I got into a share house with a wonderful Chinese gentleman whose family had built the whole street. Every house in the street was wonderful houses, and he had the plushest one of all with the stables out the back. And I was sharing house with him and two radical feminist vegetarians. This was tough for a sort of know-nothing kid from the sticks who knew how to cook a steak. So, it was a bit tricky. So after a while, I just couldn't cope with it. and I found myself a flat. But that was expensive and I didn't know quite what to do. But after a while, I got a note in my letterbox from somebody saying, can I have a talk with you, please? Can you call my number? So I called the number, and it turned out that in the deconsecrated church across the street from me, the manager of the event venue, per se, was living in the belfry illegally, and he had no bathroom, and he was desperate to find a place where he could have a bathroom. So he offered to pay me money to have a key to just use my bathroom. And because I was into the science fiction and the fantasy and all that sort of stuff, my bedroom, which was right next to the bathroom, was adorned with fantasy posters. And, I had my sword hung off the head of the bed, and my chainmail was hung off the foot of the bed, all this sort of stuff. And of course, he saw that every day. He happily named that room my passion pit. And it was great. It worked really well because I hardly ever saw him. But then one day he approached me and he sort of said, look, I need a bit of a hand. Could you help serve at, and I think it was like the King Richard III club or something. Could you put your kit on and come and help serve? So I did. And I wandered into this club's feast as a server, and they were blown away because I had genuine chainmail, right? And they had painted silver knitted stuff. It was wool, knitted, painted silver. So they were just gobsmacked at actual chainmail. They'd never seen it. And then sort of come the time for their king to hold court, Bevan, the organizer, said, can you just do something? And so I clumped up behind the crown, drew my sword and stood at guard, sword uppermost, looking as mean as I possibly could, as the king held court. And once again, they were just blown away. They just didn't know what to make of it. And so there you go. Anyway, Bevan was very happy. He thought it was great. And he sort of said, look, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. What I can do for you is I can get you into an event that another club is holding here, and I'll get you in for free. You can do the feast with them. They're sort of a bit more open about people coming in. That'd be great. And that's how I encountered the SCA.
Wow.
And so I'm not certain. I may even have been wearing a white belt when I went in there. I knew nothing. I had no idea. I went in armed in the chainmail, basically the same thing I'd gone before. And as I'm sure you can imagine, it could have gone very badly for me in that way because I'd broken so many conventions, but the people were fantastic. They accepted that I knew nothing and just explained to me, normally we wouldn't do this. That's fine. Normally that wouldn't be right. That's fine. And I met these people and it was just great. So what became the kind of hub of my journey there was a share house full of SCA people. And the names that are principal in my memory, I'm very bad with names, were Morwenna of Oystermouth and Charles of the Park. And so they were the people that I went to events with, did all that sort of stuff. Right. Up to and including one fun day when I fronted up to their place on a Saturday morning, sort of said, anything going on? I'm at a loose end. What do you reckon? I was pretty sure there weren't any events on. I just wanted to hang out with my friends. And they went, we're going for a drive. You want to come for a drive? So I went, yeah, for sure. No worries. We'll go for a drive. 300 kilometres later, as we crossed the border into New South Wales, I said, where are we going? I said, oh, there's an event on in Canberra. Going to Politicopolis. I went, guys, I've got the clothes I stand up in and a wallet. That's it. I've got nothing else. What am I going to do? And they said, oh, we'll stop off at some shops. You can get a sort of, get yourself a toothbrush, some toothpaste, some soap, maybe a fresh set of underwear. So I did. And just had a fun time at the event there, ended up crashed out on the floor with about 15 other people, all by cheek by jowl, in borrowed gear for the event itself. Because I couldn't sleep on the floor like that, it was no good. I ended up in the kitchen in a circle of chairs, passing the port bottle around. And, you're talking about, Brucey was there and several other people who are just long time history of Lochac were in that kitchen, and we were just passing the bottle around. And it's probably worth noting that this was probably, I'm not absolutely certain the year, it was 83, 84 or 84, 85. And if you remember from Rowan's session, the SCA hadn't existed very long in Lochac. And here I was in another state from where it had initially started up, and it was vibrant, it was happening. So the whole how it got started in Lochac, it was picked up very, very quickly. And the work that was done by those people at the start was really something. They really set it up. So I believe that we were a Viscounty at the point. James the Sinister, I think, was one of the earliest Viscounts. And so I saw him in action and spent time with sort of some people now drummed out of the SCA, unfortunately, but I had a good time with them at the time. So Ranadine of Tara, but he wasn't allowed to register that. I did armouring with him and several other people whose history goes way back. Yeah, so it was quite something. Yeah, so that's how I got into it. A random guy just saying, "Can I use your bathroom?" So yeah.
And you let him.
Yeah, well, I needed the money. I ended up getting a flatmate in the end. That really did help as well.
Right.
But the trap with Australia and the climate at that time was that not long after that, I was only in Melbourne a couple of years, the work ran out and I ended up back in Tasmania with the family. So, I mean, that's kind of the next phase of things for me, was when I moved to Tasmania. But I did manage to get to festival once. And this is the picture here. So I believe this is 1985, I'm not certain. And there I was with Braddock McCurrum and the Clan McCurrum. I think I'm the guy just to the left of the Pavis there, with cobbled together armour. I was authorised on the spot as a javelineer, and I went out and about to sort of have some fun at festival. I have no idea how I got there. I don't remember. I'm pretty certain I had like one set of garb, the clothes I stood up in. I don't think there were such things as food funds and big groups at that point. I don't know how I managed it.
And for those of us that are not from Lochac, when you say festival, you mean Rowaney, is that correct?
Yes, Rowaney Festival, yeah. So, hitched a lift with somebody from Melbourne to Sydney, effectively, and in the lands outside that area.
And how long of a drive is that?
12 hours. Oh no, it might be closer to sort of 7 or 8, I think. Yeah, so it's hundreds of kilometers. Yeah, but people don't. They do it. The people drive across from South Australia to festival. It definitely happens. Yeah. So, and once again, I don't have a lot of, excuse me, no shit where there I was stories. But one of them came from that festival when I met Torgel Hawkhurst, and they had a bush battle where the bushes it was like a maze. You could not get through them. And at one phase in that battle, I had found myself with my 2 javelins alone in amongst the bushes, and this heavy fighter came rushing toward me and basically lay me out flat on my back on the bushes. They supported the weight of both of us.
Wow.
Right. And, and he said to me, "My lord, by rights you should be dead, but I've lost both arms in a previous combat," and he ran away. So I tried to javelin him in the back, but I was pretty bad at it. And that's how I met Torgel Hawkhurst. And the other sort of there I was story from that particular festival was I ended up on the little flanking group with Brucey and a couple of other people. And we were told to sort of go this way, that way, up in the battle. And Leon was called. It took about 5 steps and an archer shot me in the heart from the other side of the field. And we're talking smack bang on the heart. Right. Perfect shot. And I don't know how far apart we were, but it had to be at least 50 meters, if not further. And you're going, that's just such an awesome shot. The story obviously was later that they were aiming for Brucey and got me instead. But, you know, I lay down dead with the best seats in the house to watch the battle as that flanking unit destroyed the opposing side effectively, and we won. So there you go, my contribution to a win in a tournament. Yeah. But you know, after that sort of festival, I headed back to Tasmania. Was pretty hard to get work, and I did finally get in a government program that got me a decent bit of work. And then I ended up at the state-run Hydroelectric Commission, where I was working in IT with a gentleman by the name of Kelly Johnston. And I worked there a couple of years or so. And then I was poached by his wife to another company. And then in 1992, I think it was, Morwenna of Oystermouth, who I'd sort of visited at the share house there, she rang me up and said, I'm in Tasmania, there's an SCA group, where the hell are you? So we're talking like an 8-year gap where I did not have any contact with the SCA at all. And then the next thing I know, I'm with a forming barony. You know, it's on the track to become a barony. And there I introduced Kelly and Lillian to the SCA. Now they went on to become Baron and Baroness of Stormholt.
Wow.
Yeah, so they left Tasmania, went to Melbourne and took on the role of Baron and Baroness. Very dear friends, so many years. I miss Kelly terribly. He's a great man. Yeah, so, but no, we had a great time. My wife, well, not my wife at this point, just my girlfriend. We just got into it. It was great fun. The people in Tasmania were pretty good at getting the royalty to visit. So that's Prince and Princess, Alwyn and Ingrid, very popular, wonderful people, absolutely wonderful. So they visited
Did you meet your wife in the SCA or did you bring her in?
We kind of came in together when I was reintroduced in 99. Well, I think it's 92. That the years are a little bit fuzzy.
I understand.
Yeah. But we had a nice property. We had a 5-acre property. And so we could set up a tawny field, an archery range, all that sort of stuff. And so we hosted visiting luminaries ourselves. And that's John of Skye in the background, who was Prince at the time of that particular event. And that's Juana from the West, who came out to visit several times. We got a lot of good support from the Kingdom of the West. They were marvellous. So they were there. And the advantage I had with the property was this also allowed me to grow some of the fruits that I use in the various drinks. So one of the drinks that is, I believe, my signature drink is blackcurrant melomel, so blackcurrant and honey brewed up. And I was growing the currants on the property at that point. So it was pretty much a from scratch thing, getting local clover honey and doing that. And I've made that blackcurrant each year for many years, gaps notwithstanding.
What got you into brewing within the SCA? Is that something you were doing outside of the organization?
No, it wasn't. I'm glad you asked. The enculturation that I got when I was in Stormhold was excellent. And I got a really good impression of the kinds of things you needed to help a group get along. You needed some good cooks, you needed some good organizers, you needed some people who could make the armor, you needed, all these people that you needed. And it came across to me, you needed a brewer. I made the decision with no knowledge of brewing that I would take it up in Innisfail to give the group a brewer.
Wow.
So I had no idea, absolutely zero. So it was into complete anachronists and the Known World Handbook and all that sort of stuff. And I started with from scratch recipes. I had no idea. So I just did what I could and I lucked out. The first couple of things I did worked. They were tasty. They were pretty easy to do. And it worked. So yay me. But I think there's a lot of luck involved there, and that got me started.
How did you get a hold of equipment? Did you have a local like brewery supply shop, or did you just kind of cobble everything together yourself?
Home brewing is very, very popular in Lochac. It's not at all difficult in any capital city to find brew shops that'll give you everything. So I started out brewing in 5-litre demijohns. I quickly graduated away from there, and I'm very, very much in favour of brewing in reasonably large quantities because it helps, particularly with meads. Letting them age is very important. You want to give them plenty of time. It's one of these things in life. As a brewing laurel, you get offered a lot of drinks. And when something goes across my palate and the first thing I ask you is, how much of this did you make? This is because I think it's good. Like I think it's really good. And I really want to know that you've got more than 5 litres or more than a couple of litres, because frequently I'm also asking because I'm thinking this will be great in 5 years' time. It's good now, it'll be great then. You want to be brewing with a little bit more, particularly if you're doing mead. Yeah. So, all right. So this is another little event that was held at Innisfail, and this picture is really here because there's a second generation person here, and if you can recognise her, we'll come back because she's in later photos as well.
Well, I don't recognize her. Are you going to tell us who she is?
I will later on.
Okay.
For the people in Lochac, see if they can pick it. It's she went far. Let me say, she went far.
Wow.
I really was sort of want to draw attention to Hrolf Jolfson and Madeline de Bourgogne, who became the first Baron and Baroness of Innisfail. They were there at the very start with Rowan, and they were magnificent. And another fabulous reason that stuck, made the SCA stick for me. They were so supportive of everybody around them, just marvelous people. And they're still working hard in Innisfail to this day. Their depth of knowledge, just magnificent. So they once again, their encouragement, advice along the way, once again, set me up to stay. It was really something. And we weren't sort of hesitant about getting in the papers. It wasn't unusual for us to turn up in the papers. We had a lot of fun with that. They were willing to come along. And then when we were sort of going to be holding big events, this is up on the northwest coast of Tasmania, we sort of got a camping ground up there to hold the first investiture of our Baron and Baroness as a barony. And so it got in the papers. They thought it was the best thing ever. I brought my brother along. It was pretty important to have a member of the family there for reasons that will become apparent, because I had a plan. We had Christian and Susan coming out from the west, we had Brucey and Catherine, the Prince and Princess at the time, and lo and behold, as Herald, Rowan. So it was pretty special. It was great to be there. Log cabin, candle lights, cold. Not called Brass Monkey War for nothing. But people were pretty happy, and we got a baron and baroness, and Innisfail became a barony. But there was more afoot here. I had business in court, and nobody but the royalty knew what was going on here. The royalty knew, the heralds did not. And the Prince's herald was pretty upset about that. He was grilling me big time when I said, I've got business at court, the first baronial court. And he's going, what is it? I'm going, I'm not going to tell you. And he's going, I've got to know. And I said, I'm not going to tell you. And then Brucey wanders by, sort of sees what's going on and goes, do as he says. So it was great to have the Prince's support. I called up Tatiana as well. Now the herald has only got a scroll. I give him a scroll. You saw he had a scroll in his hand there. He was given a scroll of what to say. Tatiana came up. I washed her feet and gave her shoes. We exchanged rings. And we were betrothed.
Wow.
Kieran, the Innisfail Herald, to hear his voice crack at the time, just choice, just the best thing ever. The poor guy, and hardly a dry eye in the house, because like nobody knew what was going on until we did it. And he had me swear, absolutely swear, that the only way he would ever forgive me was if he could preside over the wedding. So he did.
Oh, that's wonderful. And it was a surprise to her?
That was all planned. We all knew, we'd got it all sorted out amongst ourselves about how the particularly the ring ceremony, and if only I could remember the exact wording, but it was sort of like, I pledge my heart, I pledge my troth, I pledge, and the ring moved on the fingers until it was placed. And so my wedding ring that's on now was my betrothal ring. And at the wedding ceremony, we switched it to the wedding hands.
Wow.
This is an award token for the Azure Pennon. And I know it might, people going cheesy, is he going to show all the awards he got? And I am, in fact. But there's a reason to my madness. I didn't go after these. This was not my intent. I did not feel that I was on a badge collecting thing. But what happened was they all turned up at linchpin moments, and they just encouraged me to continue. I do feel that the award structure that is used inside the SCA is very, very good from an encouragement point of view to sort of go, you've done well, you've behaved well. We recognise that this is the case. And I think that's very valuable. And certainly on my journey as an artisan, it helped a lot. So that was the first one. I go, you look at the poor thing, beaten and bashed, hand painted. The first ones were sort of pretty special.
And for those of us who are not from your kingdom, what is this, like a mid-level arts award?
This is the local barony level. So this was created once we became a barony, and I was probably amongst the first recipients of one of these.
Awesome.
So yeah, it was pretty special to get in there. So the next year, after the place, the Innisfail became a barony, we had the wedding, and we did it as a 3-day thing. So on the Friday, we got the law and order and civil side of it done. And, I said how important Kelly and Lillian were to me. I'm using their mundane names, please excuse me. They signed my marriage certificate to Tatiana. So, that they were just linchpin in my life. Wonderful people. The next day we held a tournament to determine the bride's champion. The bride's champion was to escort the bride. The most hotly contested heavy tournament I had ever seen. The guys were serious about getting this, and Martin de Montblanc was successful in the tournament. So the father of the young lady that we saw earlier.
Ah.
So we had the hall all hired out. Baron and Baroness came in. I came in with my brother escorting me. So it kind of dates those banners behind me. I've been 26 years married. And Tatiana came in supported by the children, who enjoyed so much throwing all sorts of things at the crowd. We presented ourselves, and there Kieran is performing the ceremony for us. And we very literally tied the knot. We tied the ribbons of our headdresses together, Baron and Baroness first, the bride's parents second, and the groom's parents third, and tied it all together. And there you go. People did a good job. We then went round anybody else who wished to tie it, and they're all tied up. So
what wonderful symbolism.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun. So then, sort of, a couple of years pass, and you'd seen him as prince, and now John and Gabrielle are actually king and queen of the West, and they bring Purgatorio to Lochac. To my understanding, it's the first time it's ever been off the continental United States. And I went there with Nicolette and Rudolph, and these are photos from Nicolette as Alpha is being knighted. Now, Alpha, a stalwart of Lochac, he has been working so hard for so many years, just once again, one of these magnificent talents that continues to work through the years. And so he was knighted at that event. It was, for me, pretty special. I'd not seen a knighting like this before, and that was pretty incredible. Who knows how hard that buffet is? Well, maybe if the face in the background gives you some idea, it was pretty strong. So it was really something. And he sort of belted in the white belt, and just, that was really something to be at. And I ended up in the little group that I was in, and Nicolette took the photograph of this gentleman here holding the sword of state. Now, coincidences are fascinating. They fascinate me how they happen. This is Robert of Woodsend, and I join with him each day for Pell practice with Leopold of Steelweeds. And who would have thought it? Just took a random picture of him in 1994, and I see him every day online now.
Wow. Once again, wonderful chap. It's been, and I did not know who he was at that point, but he looked great. He was definitely worth a picture. So, yeah. So I've put the little label up here of one of my drinks, because Purgatorio was another turning point for me in terms of drinks. At that, the Arts and Sciences competition was brewing, and I entered. I was pretty happy with what I'd made. Documentation, maybe a bit ordinary, but still. And I thought I was in with a chance here. And it's one of those classic things where I'm sort of thinking, I reckon I can place, maybe I'll get third or something like that. So when it came to the announcements for the Kingdom A&S competitions, they announced the third place getter, and it wasn't me. Now I was pretty confident. I'm thinking, second would be wonderful. Purgatorio, everybody else entering second would be great. They announced second.
not me. Utterly crushed. I'm going, damn it, I thought I was on track here. I thought I'd done pretty well. I'd done so pretty despondent. I wasn't necessarily paying attention, and I was called out as the winner.
Wow.
And so you sort of go, one of these things that once again, I've gone and won something now. Very, very thrilled, but it kind of puts the pressure on. But once again, it's that journey thing. Each of these things encourages you to do better. So now I'll move on to this, still at Purgatorio. Sir Sebastian of Montbard, magnificent. Took a picture of him because he looks fantastic. Great looking guy. And Cornelius von Beck in the background, the Prince. I didn't know either of them from Adam, but worth a picture, looking good. We'll come back to that. So on to another label. Brewing is a process. You definitely learn as you go. And the Spice Plum Mead is one that I do like to come back to, because I've kind of mentioned about mead and aging. Spice Plum Mead, when I made it in 1995, absolutely appalling. The worst thing that would ever cross your lips. You would not want to think about drinking it at all. At all. It was awful. I'm a patient man. I bottled it up and put it away. The next year I tried it, and it was really, really bad. 3 years on, a lot of the stuff had settled out, because I had used ground ginger, and they were just in suspension inside the liquid. So over time, they started to settle out, and you started to get the nature of the real thing. And so at 3 years, you're going, well, this isn't too bad. At 5 years, it was good. At 10 years, it was awesome. Absolutely to die for, good. And I gave away the last 2 bottles of that at the 25th anniversary of Innispore. They were 23 years old, and they were still really good. So I gave one to the then Baroness and Baroness, and to the Crown. So don't feel you've necessarily completely screwed the pooch with something that tastes bad, particularly a mead. Put it aside, leave it alone. If all else fails, I'm sure somebody has a still. That's the Roman Lilies. So shortly after that, the Principality level award at Lochac was awarded. And once again, it was that whole, let's keep on track. So around this time, I moved to Brisbane. Work Australia, it's the way it goes. Sometimes you just move. Right? So I'd been in Hobart, it was time to move on. I'd been on a holiday to the Gold Coast, and when I got back, a theatre nurse in the place that I was working sort of said to me, how'd you like Queensland? And I went, it was great, because I went in autumn from Tasmania, and Tasmania cold in autumn. Gold Coast, fantastic. I had a wonderful time. And he sort of went, my mum and dad still live up there. I'll get them to send you job ads. And I went, yeah, for sure. The first one he gave me, I didn't expect him to give me any. The first one he gave me listed every single qualification I had and every single experience area I had exactly.
Wow.
Exactly. The interview I had over the phone apparently was just a formality. They said they were flying me up for a second interview. They flew me to Brisbane for a second interview. And it was a drive with the guy who was going to be my boss, trying to show me where I'd live.
Nice.
So they'd already decided, you're coming up, come on down. Yeah, so there you go. Yeah. Now, I wanted to try and keep in touch with the SCA. And where I was going to be living was on the south side of Brisbane, which puts me in the St. Florian de la Riviere group, which was just forming up. and it was on its track to barony. And somebody suggested that I get in touch with Cornelius von Beck. So I did. And that was a great move from the point of view of getting me established in St. Florian. Tatiana was still down in Innisfail trying to sort out things with the house. And so I got into effectively like a dinner group with Cornelius and Morwenna and other members of the SCA in the area. And that sort of established me in St. Florian. So it was great to be taken under somebody's wing like that. I didn't really put it together that was Cornelius von Beck, who'd been Prince in that previous picture, Purgatorio. It was sort of like, I really didn't put it together. And so shortly thereafter, once we were both established in St. Florian, we went to festival and we got into Sir Sebastian's war unit, Vompa. And I mean, look at it, it's huge. It was so much fun setting up for that. So I'm in their last Vompa tabard on the right as an archer. So, had a great time. And, that this household Sebastian, Vompa still going and doesn't field those sorts of numbers these days, but it holds on to its members pretty closely. So I'm still in it.
Nice.
They're having a get together soon, so it should be pretty good.
And
but
so during this whole thing, you are also fighting, is that correct?
Yeah, really what attracted me the most to the SCA was the fighting. Consistently, you will see a fighting thread through this all the way, because it's what really kept me going. But you can see, like fighting and brewing, they go well together because
yes.
After you've had a fight, you have a drink. But and as I was saying earlier, did I know I'd ended up effectively in the royal household? So Cornelius, not shy to enter the coronet tourneys, and that was the mythos. The group of people I'd fallen in with, very strong arts focus, very strong fighting focus, very accomplished, and the whole household-based group project thing, I just loved it. People would discuss nearly everything we did was kind of consensus-driven. What do we want to do? What is going to work? How can we all do it? We'll all present. It will all happen. And that was, I found that extremely stimulating environment to be in. It once again pushed me to continue the brewing, just to get better and better. For the first time, people started to ask me about brewing beer. I'd never done it. I had no idea, right? And in effect, because it was going to become to the point where I needed to churn it out, I turned to kits. And I make no bones about it. If I want to churn out quantity, I go to the brew shop, I buy the kit that does the business. And so beers and cider, I make a lot of cider. I drink cider at home consistently, always from kits. I tweak the recipe very slightly, but it's about churning it out. But my meads and my melomels and metheglins, those I take seriously. So they're from period sources, and really I almost exclusively use one questionable source. If you really want to be like that, I use Digby's almost exclusively, because I can read it and I can interpret the recipes, and I've done enough of them that I'm pretty certain I'm going to get it spot on. Even when I try a new one, I do 25 litres. If I'm trying a new one, it's 25 litres. A lot of people wouldn't do that. I do it every time. It's like 25 litres. Like I say, if all else fails, I'll leave it alone for years, or there's always a still somewhere. Not legal here. I didn't say that. Okay. But that, that's kind of what I ended up in amongst that. Kingdom of the West, Roseleaf, next in the sequence. and the lovely ladies of the household. So there's Morena, Salaberge, and Tatiana. They were strong people, very knowledgeable people, extremely good to be around. It was a lot of fun, a lot of fun. The first incarnation of the White Company. So we have some of the people I can't even remember the names. We're going back quite a way. So on the right, Leofric, next to him, Ulfgar. I've forgotten the name of the gentleman beside him. Myself being a fool in the middle. Manfred, back left. Philippe and Cornelius there. So I mean, Cornelius and Leofric were sort of working on bits of armor, and we were just trying to present well and look good. So, and as festival after festival continued, the Kingdom of the West was very supportive. Cornelius had a very good relationship with Fabian. And so Fabian would come and be in our campsite and would attend festivals. I lose track of how many festivals he attended that we attended. It was magnificent to have him with us. Because he was a draw card, people would come to where we were because he was there. And so I met a lot of people. It was really very helpful. And he eventually, with all those festivals where I was providing all the alcohol, when we went to festival, all the alcohol was effectively available. It got to the point where I had kegs on tap, and all that. It was all the festival. You come to our campsite, have a drink. What do you want? Bottles with the various meads, kegs with beers and ciders, all on the go. But because it was kind of a household thing to do, entering Coronet Tawnies was what you did. And one of them was held at a vineyard shortly after Fabian at the previous festival had given me a court baron. So now I actually introduce myself. Quite often, if I'm doing the full formal introduction, I will say Baron to the court of Duke Fabian of the West, because this kind of dates me in Lochac history, and it's he is quite a figure in my history. He's been very, very helpful. So Coronet Tawny at a vineyard, brewer in his natural environment almost, although I haven't done much wine with grapes, strangely enough. So, and there I am saluting during the Coronet Tawny. Another festival, Fabian again. And we're coming up to the point at which I was actually laureled. And he was present, which was great, because I knew very little about it. When the laurel was offered, I said yes instantly, in case they changed their mind. And I put this token up here because it's significant in several ways. Firstly, it reminds me to talk about vigil. And the vigil, during the entire vigil, the night before I was to be laureled, Fabian sat with me. And so he was in the tent with me, and people were allowed in individually to speak with me. And that was really, really special. There was some people offering pretty good advice. Some of it I now know is kind of the litany of the things they tell you. But even so, it was pretty helpful at the time. And during that, Charles of the Park, who I had met as one of the first people I ever met in the SCA, came in to talk with me, which was great. It was so good to see him. He was an incredibly proficient baker, and he was laureled for baking breads and all that sort of stuff. And at festival, he baked consistently to provide bread at festival for many years. And so it was great to chat with him again, because like I'd seen him in passing, talked to him a little bit, but then I sort of got to speak with him. Whilst I was speaking with him, Fabian said, "Oh, have you thought anything about regalia?" And I said, what are you talking about? "Oh, it's kind of traditional to ask somebody for their laurel medallion." And I went, oh, okay. And there's Charles of the Park sat in front of me, a laurel. And I'm going, you are first point of contact with my SCA experience. You're a laurel now. So I asked him for his token, and he looked crushed. And he said, I don't wear one. I don't have one.
Oh.
Seconds later, he did. And it's this one.
Oh.
So it came from Fabian to him to me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so not just, it was no thought on Fabian's part. He just lifted it off, gave it to him and said, you've got one now. And it came to me. So, you know, I cherish that one because of it's tiny, you know, it's a little thing like this. He called it his stealth long because he just usually kept it under his shirt. You know, you couldn't see it. So he didn't make a big thing about it. And that's all, you know, just fabulous. And so then I was Laurel by Connor and his. This photograph, so lucky. I had photographs of my laureling taken from further to the left of this shot, and all you could see was the support pillars for the tent. Kind of my hands and the support pillars for the tent. And years later, I think it was probably the year before last, somebody else was posting pictures up of events they'd been to, and these turned up.
Wow.
So I got to have one where I'm actually swearing fealty, and you can see me in person there. And the whole.
Do you remember what year you were laureled?
2001. Yeah. So swearing fealty, it still gets me. It really is important.
Yeah.
And during that, as each sort of phrase of the West Kingdom, you know, sort of the, you know, to come and to go, to do and to let be, I made eye contact on each, you know, to do and to let be. I made eye contact with the king, eye contact with the queen, eye contact with the king, eye contact with the queen. I meant it.
It's very powerful.
Yeah. And in Lochac, there's a concept of considering yourself to be in perpetual fealty. I do consider myself to be in perpetual fealty to the crown. I can't always get to all the events of all the crowns, so I don't always get to swear fealty at an event with them, but if at all possible, I will. And most of the time I can manage it. So,
I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty good. And they swear back to you, and they're making an oath there as well.
Yes, it's a two-way street.
Yeah. You know, and people were sort of saying to me, "Is there anything particularly important?" And I said, to my household, it's very important that the crown swears to the household. You know, it was a very big thing for me. It really was. Crown tournaments coronet tournaments continued. We weren't a kingdom yet. So I introduced Tatiana a few times. So it was good fun. No chance of winning, but it was good fun. Bottom left of that picture, Cormac, and tournaments. There's a history there, and it kind of started out then. It's really good. Once again, great person, and Elspeth, his lady, just wonderful. You know, Baron and Baroness of a group in Lochac as well, hardworking for the society. It's just wonderful to know these people. When I talked earlier about group projects, this was one of them, our banners, and they were a great deal of fun. And we brought in our own little sort of household tradition around those. You'll notice that mine, just at the bottom, you can see the tail has two tails. Got to be a peer to do that. That's what we said inside our house, just a thing. And it was quite a bit of fun when one of the household got peered and they cut theirs at the ceremony.
I love traditions like that. That's awesome.
Yeah. Wonderful banners. If only I knew where mine was now. Because it sort of ends up, it goes out to an event and comes on. I thought I had it at home, and Tatiana's is there next to it. I don't know. I don't know where it is. I don't have any photographs of it, but in 2002, Lochac became a kingdom, and I was there in the first Crown tournament. One of 56 people, the biggest ever Crown tournament to be held. It was held at Rowaney Festival, and it was sensational to be in and out into. No surprises there. But the following year, I entered again. And this was an excellent tournament to be near and to be a part of, because my good friend Alaric of Bangor went on to win it, and my good friend Leofric Willoughby de Roke went on to come second. So it was a pretty special occasion. Another thing that meant an awful lot to me in terms of what happens in St Florian is the Battle of the Butney Cross. This is a tavern event, and I definitely went nuts by the time I had 6 kegs to fill up. 6 kegs came to Battle of the Butney Cross.
Wow.
Because after we'd had these melee battles, we were in there having simple tavern food and plenty to drink. It was a lot of fun. And a nice thing about the Battle of the Butney Cross is that if you're on the winning side, you get one of the Butney Crosses. You know, I'm wearing one today. I have the banner behind me that you get to hold as the team that won, and you're expected to take it onto the war field. So I'm actually, along with Milos Stoner and Eisenbart Cortain, we are the holders of the banner of the Butney Cross now. And as you can see, I have been on the winning team 5 times. Now, I will readily state that's because I was very lucky with who I was in the team with. Eisenbart, a Knight of the Realm, particularly good. Milo Stoner, also awesome with his glaive. So I was the guy with the shield, and they were the pole armsmen. And I just tried to look dangerous and distract everybody from the guys who were really going to kill them. So we had an awesome time that last time, but a great tournament. Really enjoy it, or every time. So happy to be able to have been on a winning side so many times. Awesome fun. And another traditional event up here in St Florian de la Riviera, which I also feel is just fantastic, is the Knights of the North Part of Arms. And so the Knights hold the field, and the also-rans like myself get to challenge them, and awesome fun. And to watch over the years the number of knights increase. This group has definitely been very successful in the fighting area, and I keep supplying them with booze, so it's pretty good.
It helps with retention, right?
Say again?
The booze helps with retention.
Well, I hope so. That you do. I have seen sort of over the years that drunkenness is much rarer now. People don't sort of push it quite so far. And there are quite a few more people now who just won't drink at all, but it's there and it's their option. And I think that's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
Continued with the household. This is sort of White Company version 2 or 3. We changed the style, we changed the details, all that sort of stuff. So still working on the sort of looking good out on the field. But this lineup is a fascinating lineup. Alicia, who is the armoured person to the leftmost, Pelican now, Philippe there, knighted, Cornelius there, Knight Laurel, Leofric, Knight Laurel, Catan, now a Knight Laurel, Stefan, now a Knight Laurel, wow. Myself, a Laurel, and if I could remember the gentleman on the right, I'd be very happy. we were holding the Butney Cross banner at the time, and Salaberge was kind enough to hold it for us.
Wonderful.
So that tells you why the arts to myself, and I've certainly branched out a bit. This outfit I'm wearing, I made it sort of rescaled out of a 16th century manuscript for a Hungarian men's jacket. So this the dolman and mente combination. the chain that my Laurel medallion on is I've linked those up. I love doing that, just little chain link type stuff. And, I just turn your hand to a few other things. It's a lot of fun. So, yeah, but, bit of a lineup there. And, I still, as you'll probably see later, I spend a lot of time with Stefan and a lot of time with Lochac. They're both so much help to me. They always are.
So at any point, did you apprentice or squire to a peer, or did you just sort of have this really supportive household?
I had a supportive household. At no point was I ever apprenticed to anybody, and I have never been squired to anybody. In 1994, in the Crown Tournament, Wreath of Valor. And it's worth noting, that's my first non-arts related, and in fact, non-brewing related award. The first one. Even the court barony was really because I supplied booze to the Crown consistently whenever he came to festival. So that was the first one. And I'd also received a service award from St. Florian because I kept providing all the booze. So you're looking at it going, booze related until a Wreath of Valor of all things. So yeah.
Such a cool award. I love those.
So once again to a label and to talk about brewing. In 2005, well, actually 2004, the challenge was made. Master Drake, who is now also in St. Florian, he was there at the time. We were challenged to pick each other a recipe that was from a period source and make it. And so Drake, bless his heart, said, I've got one for asparagus wine. I'm going to challenge you with that. And I thought, oh my God, asparagus wine, really? So that's a Roman recipe. We're talking ancient. And I thought, well, that's the challenge. I'd better step up because we're both Laurels. And then Drake let slip that he also had a mung bean wine recipe. And so I went, well, I have to go there. And so he made a mung bean wine. Particularly nasty, the mung bean. And I have one bottle of it still, and I threaten him with it from time to time. It is probably, it was bad enough to start with. It might be all right now, probably not. But I still have some of this. To an extent, I kind of cheated. I didn't squish the grapes myself and that. I used a Chardonnay concentrate. And I think that set me off on a good path. Asparagus, I actually used asparagus. It's got asparagus in it. And it definitely has sea salt in it. But in a 25-litre container, it only has 600 mils of sea salt. And you can tell it is definitely there.
Interesting.
And this will feature again later. Around 2005, my Tatiana came to me and said, I want to stop work. I take what she needs very seriously. She had been injured at work. She's quite a slight lady, and she was working with large devices, and they were asking her to lift and carry, and she'd hurt herself, and she did not want to work anymore. So I did the budget at that point. I went through the numbers, what were we spending, where was it, could we afford for her to not work? And those numbers told me we were spending her entire income on travel with the SCA.
Wow.
Her entire income. And so we said, St. Florian is a great group. We can cut back on the travel. We can still go to local events and we will still be fine. Everything will go well. So she stopped work. It actually ended up, we pulled right back. We pulled right back from the SCA. We basically stopped. But we would come out for significant events. And so that was 2005. And I probably should sort of throw in there, in 2007, I had a cancer scare. And just imagine how confronting it is to be in a specialist's office and them say to your face, there is 90% chance that's cancer. And so I was operated upon, bits of me were removed, they were tested, and I got into the 10%.
Wow.
Yeah. And the specialist said to me afterwards, he said, do you give me freedom to write a paper on what we found? Because it was so unusual. Everything about it said cancer, and it wasn't. So that was 2007. But in 2010, Stefan was knighted. And as a dear friend, we came out to his knighting. And now he is a performer, through actor by profession, in effect. And he knows how to put on a show. And with Branwen beside him, who makes all their outfits, you're on a winner here. This is looking pretty good. And then he puts the millstone around his neck as part of the ceremony to show the dedication and what he has, what you have to go through and what you'll do. So much fun, just marvelous. And the three of them together, pretty special. That's their daughter, Sam, and just, it was great to be there. I also found out around that time that he was going to crown tournaments on his own. And I became incensed at that point. What the hell? You're going to crown tournaments on your own? You should have at least an attendant or something. I'll go with you. Just crown tournament, you call me, I'll go with you. So, I was making a commitment. We'd sort of got our finances sorted out that I thought I could do that. And so I say, and where's the next one? And he says, Western Australia. At which point I go, oops. You're talking 4-hour plane flight. There's no escaping the planes. But we went, and the two of us together, great fun. We travel well together. And at that particular crown tournament, he didn't do so well. He had a bit of trouble, but Gabriel de Beaumont from our home group took the field in the finals. The king at the time was Edmund of Shotley from our group. And so he's just left of shot there, and Gabriel brought it home. I'm so grateful to him for that particular crown win. He did a great job of that. It was really something. So it was a good day. There is an event that's held up here each year called the Abbey Museum Festival. There's a medieval museum up here, and they put on a big show. All sorts of reenactment groups come out, and there happens to be a guy who has the birds of prey, and that is an Australian wedge-tailed eagle. They are monstrously big. He was hard to hold. The advice was hold him close to your body because you won't be able to hold his weight out of arm's reach. But that's a lovely shot. Shortly thereafter, he started to eyeball me, and I'll tell you, you're looking at one of those in the eyes, and you're going, "He'd go me. That would hurt. It really would." They are no mess, no fuss. Those guys, they are big. Yeah, wow. But yeah. So during this time, I had been going to crown tournaments with Stefan, and wouldn't you know it, the time he wins, he didn't take me with him. Mm. But we did get in amongst the rain, pretty big time. So Tatiana came out, and here we are at the Rose tourney with the ladies of the Rose presenting gifts to the people as they were going on and off the field. And here you also see that young lady that you saw in the earlier pictures, the Lady of the Rose, Celiadam. So she's just bending over to pick something up now. A better shot there of her on the right. So, and Tatiana, her usual self, trying not to be seen, hiding behind the thrones. But it was pretty special to travel with Stefan and Brandon, and we did it quite a lot, and over to Western Australia with them again. The Western Australian guys, they are, I keep singing the praises of all the places I go. They're awesome people all over this country who just really pull it out of the bag. But you can just magnificent. The Western Australians do a great job. They really do. So over there in and Stefan's on the field there fighting rapier, so he's in the blue and red. Yeah. And he has a good time with. So during the rain, he picked up a bow, was shooting, got into the fencing, and still with all the heavy stuff. So yeah. And that rain came to an end. Unfortunately, it was fun. We went. That's at in New Zealand, so we travelled with them quite a bit. We didn't do as much as they did, but Tatiana and I supported them during the rain, and just being around them, so much fun. And at his step down, Stefan immediately said, "And I'll be contesting crowns again from now on." Right, and so there I was again, being his factotum, carrying his sword and shield to crown tournaments. And wouldn't you know it, he came second in that one. He has the record for coming second the most times in Lochac. But that was a lot of fun. So I really enjoyed the thing. And one of the things that happened when I sort of came back in with them during the rain was, at local events, there'd always been this sort of, oh yeah, this is fine, I'm enjoying myself, SCA local event. When we started to travel the country again with them as crown, there was this sudden feeling in my heart going, this is an SCA event, and it's all about getting on a plane. It came home to me. I'm going, SCA means getting on a plane. It is the nature of Lochac. So we showed the asparagus wine there, and that is me presenting Ariston with a bottle of it, because he had a Roman persona and he had heard about the competition. But we're talking now, 2017, I think. No, where were we? I've just got to go through my notes just to be sure I know when we are. Yeah, I've lost track of it. The file name would have told me, but I can't see the file name in slideshow view. But that, and it's actually not too bad, that one now. You kind of get the grassiness of the asparagus and a tiny little bit of the saltiness, but it's basically wine. And it's not too bad. So it was fun to be able to present it to Ariston after he expressed an interest. And I was able to present Stefan at the invocation. And he went on to win with me there. Yay! It was really something. Once again, the bizarre stories that come out of these. When we were flying over to this particular one, he was talking about how in some of the other tournaments, he'd not had a little something that he needed to kind of get him relaxed and get him going. And he said that at a previous one where he had lost, he felt he needed to laugh. He needed to laugh. And so we were bunking with some people who provided us a room. So we were actually in bunk beds. We kind of kicked the kids out of the room and we were in the bunk beds. And I had seen a video online that I thought would make him laugh. So I told him about it. And it was where somebody had placed what we call glad wrap across the doorway and then called their cat. And the cat just face planted into the clear film, and it just looks so bizarre and so funny. And I said, see if you can find that video. And he's looking for it, found it, and he just went nuts laughing. He just thought it was the best thing ever. And so I said to him, okay, so if in the tournament I think you're getting too tense and you might need a release, I will just whisper to you, glad rap cat, and you can remember the video. And so just before the finals, he was in the finals facing Roland. Roland was undefeated in the round robin tournament that was held. He had not lost to anyone, which meant he had already defeated Stefan. And so, there was some tension there. Roland was stood nearby, and I leant over to Stefan and I said, glad rap cat. And he just burst out laughing. And when he wants to project, he can project, and it was loud. And there's Roland going, what the hell? What? Hey? And Stefan really, really won that final. He just turned it on. It was amazing. Yeah. But in another way, it also kind of talks to the relationship I have with him as such a good friend. The other thing he had always said to me was, if I ever saw anything that was questionable in his conduct, that I should bring it up. And during that final, there was a circumstance whereby a blow was thrown, and I saw it happen, and I'm sort of going, I'm not sure why Stefan isn't dead yet. And then it was discussed, and there was quite a lot of discussion around that particular thing. And they did determine amongst themselves in the Crown that it was not good. The circumstances were such that it was not good, and that was it. Off he went. But I did say to him when he walked off the field, I said, if you hadn't discussed that at the time, I would have been bringing that up with you. Because it is just, he is down the line about that.
Yeah.
It's Crown tournaments. It has to be good. There mustn't be a question. And so they were uncertain, and they completed the whole thing on the field to everybody's satisfaction. Just absolutely vital, in my opinion. So, and in 2017, with Stefan going to be king, I reauthorized. And that was a big thing for me. I mean, with the cancer scare, and I'd had a heart scare in 2011 as well. And we're talking 50-50 chance I could have died that night. And another thing where my cardiologist sort of went, when I met him, he sort of went, ever been diving? And I went, yes. And he went, ever dived deep? And I went, no. Talked with my mates about doing a really famous, very, very deep dive. And he carried on. And I sort of came back to him and sort of said, what did you mean by that? He sort of said, oh, you had a hole in the heart, mate. If you'd gone on a deep dive that required decompression, you'd be dead.
Wow.
And you're talking in my late teens, I talked with my mates about doing this dive, very famous, 4-hour dive, 20 minutes on the wreck. That's how deep. And if I'd done it, we wouldn't be talking today.
Wow.
So I felt I'd got my health back into a good spot. I really wanted to sort of give this fighting a good solid go again. So we went over to New Zealand again to be with Stefan and Branwen as they were crowned. And just traveling in their company, it's just marvelous. They're just so much fun. And the events as King and Queen, they are awesome. The ceremonies they do and the whole approach. Branwen's so personable, and she's in the moment. She feels the emotion. You can tell. It's just marvelous. And so we travel a lot together, up to and including Penzig.
Wow.
So here we are on the west coast of America, having flown into LA. And so we had sort of a layover where we just got in the back of somebody's van and were driven around the place. And we got to the coast there to dabble our feet in the water on the other side of the ocean to where we are. And that was pretty special. But it became something of a tradition that we would take a picture whenever we were going somewhere on a plane. And so at Penzic, we had a great time. And can you tell Stefan's an orator? His speech at the Declaration of Science at Penzic, just the best. He really knows how to turn it on. And so having reauthorised and with Stefan on the throne, back into Crown tournaments. Nice. And there I am being taken apart by Sir Eva. She showed me a thing or five. Just, I felt good in being defeated by her because I lasted a little while. She's very, very good. Really exciting to fight. Very dynamic. Yeah. So, and in that entire tournament, I won one fight, which made them fight a semi-final, because I put a death on somebody who hadn't had one up to then. So, look, we're on a plane. Oh, we're on another plane.
Wow.
And again, and this is now where Stefan is escorting me. So whilst I was escorting him to the various Crown tournaments, a term was coined for me, and that is the Tawny Wife.
Ah.
Because his wife would not go to the tourneys, so I was the Tawny Wife. And so the roles reversed. He's my Tawny Wife now.
Ah.
But this is of huge advantage to myself and to anybody else concerned, because when he's there at invocation, he does an introductory speech, and they are magnificent. He really pulls them out. The one at a November Crown where he used the heraldry on every combatant's devices to form a speech out of.
Wow.
He is remarkably talented, and it is so much fun. And so there we are at Festival, when the Crown tournament was held at Festival, and he's looking after me. You see he's holding Altani's hand, because we're getting close to the finals, and it's looking like it's going to be her. Probably a little thing from my point of view, which I'm quite pleased with, is that at that 2017 Crown tournament, I challenged Roland in the invocation, and he went on to win. In this one, I challenged Gui. I always call him Gui. It's not his proper SCA name. I always call him Gui. I challenged him. He went on to win.
That's a good trait, to challenge the toughest guy out there.
And I always thought it was the tradition, and I was amazed, particularly in 2017 when nobody had picked Roland. I'm sort of going, he's really, really good, and he wants it.
Yeah.
You've got to pick him. Right? And so, here we are again at a Crown tournament where Nicolette and Stefan are with me as my supporters. This is the one where he rattled off the heraldry of the different people as part of the speech. I don't know, I was getting ready to challenge Felix. He was definitely the pick. And they changed the order of how you were challenged. And so it was effectively a kind of a reverse precedence they did the challenges in. And so I ended up challenged by Catan, right? One of the gentlemen that was in that earlier picture, who had subsequently been knighted and laurelled. And so he challenged me. If I hadn't been challenged by him, I would have got the bye. But that was not to be. And so he definitely gave me curry that time, because I'd beaten him the previous time I'd met him. So he wasn't going to have that again in the Crown tournament. That was so much fun. And at that tournament, I got the Wreath of Chivalry. And I'll give you a hint. I'm wearing the Baroness's I was the Baroness's champion as well for St. Florian. A lovely lady, our Baroness, just marvellous. To be able to wear that for her and to represent her and to get a wreath of chivalry, I think I'm representing her pretty well.
Yeah, good job. So the wreath of chivalry and the wreath of valor are traditions that have carried over to your kingdom from the West.
Correct.
Do you want to explain what they are? Because it's not a tradition that's in many other kingdoms.
So the wreath of valor is usually for somebody who has competed above and beyond what you thought they might do. And so, I got that one in 2004, and it was a great weapon tournament, and I had been fighting with glaive, and I added a little axe head to it to make it a great axe. Not necessarily popular with a few people, but I checked it with the crown first because it was quite small for a great weapon and calling it a great axe, and it was a bit cheeky on my part. I accept that. But the crown approved it. So what can you say? But I mean, to give you some idea of quite how much the wreath of chivalry meant to me, it's framed now. And so the little coin is the token of the event. The little tassels were presented to each combatant as they were presented to the crown during the invocation. The little photograph there, they use those photographs as a way to put up online who is competing. So you get a little picture, names, and the details of that. And Tatiana had sent a little speech about supporting me there. So although I can't be there, take these words with you. And Stefan read those out as the end of my introduction, and very well received. As she says, let the raven covered with blood, the blood of our enemies, lead the white spirit wolf to the prey so that they may feast. So, the red bird and the white wolf. And there has been a long tradition of the wolf and the raven working together. So, yeah, that was really very special. It was one of my things with going into crown tournaments, that I must behave such that I am never going to put myself out of contention for chivalry. I must always behave such that I can't be put out of consideration. I'm not fussed if the crown don't necessarily pick me. I'm sure they frequently won't, but I must behave well. I have to. It's imperative. So. Shortly thereafter, still the Baroness's champion, Eva, invited me onto her guard. And another big thing, and she insisted that each of her guardsmen make themselves a Lochac tabard with the Lochac badge on it, and I was happy to do so. And I think it's probably a little bit in your face there. You might notice I'm wearing a red belt. Not squired, never squired. It's not reserved. This one was given to me by a knight. It was given to me by Cornelius von Beck, and I wear that to remind me. And a lot of people will probably understand where I'm coming from with that, because he didn't necessarily behave well. And he did cause a lot of trouble in Lochac, and I consistently wear that belt to remind me. A crown tournament again. I love the fighting. It's just the best thing. We're here to talk about Laurel, but I fight. I love it. Here I am, after having been defeated in the crown tournament by Lady Jane, and just she is from the local group here, wonderful, and she knows how to get me. I shouldn't fall for it, and I do, and she gets me. And she won the Wreath of Valor at that one. and she won one fight in that tournament against me. But when Felix described why she was given the Wreath of Valor, absolutely spot on. She went out there with no expectation, facing the best in the country, right? The hardest thing she could do as a fighter, and she fought well. She really fought well, right? And you know, I don't mean to belittle her at all from the fact that I was the only person she defeated, but she took heart and soul out on the field that day and did a fabulous job. So I'm just so supportive of that sort of thing. You know, some people might sort of go, "What? That's not Wreath of Valor." Yes, it is. Yes, it is. And that just the presentation, how they did it was round robin again, and how they did the tawny board to show who had done what. And there's Cormac. His symbol is the lute. I faced him again. He beat me again. He did a trash talk video. We tried to see if it might show here today, but I don't know. But the whole trash talking thing, him having a picture of me on his pel, all that sort of stuff, it's just marvelous. The whole theatre of it, the whole concept of it, the fact that we will almost certainly meet again on the field in a crown tournament. We don't see each other very often. It's not like I frequently go to events that he's likely to be at other than tournaments at the kingdom level. It's just so good to have that kind of, I'll see you again, and I'll see you again. Let's see what happens. It's just so much fun.
That's some good motivation.
Yeah. The picture in here, really, this is the brew crew from the Jolly Duke. So Drake and Alaric had formed up the tavern at the Great Northern War as the Jolly Duke. And as I sort of came back into the SCA in a big way, I started to contribute to the brewing for that. And so between the four of us there's William as well, who's a sort of, I don't mean to be patronizing when I say young up and coming, but he's great. He's got a talent for brewing. He's doing a good job. And so between the four of us getting together under Drake's command, perhaps, he sort of says, for this Great Northern War, Ianto, can you do this much of ciders and things and flavour them in this way? He'll do the various beers. Alaric will be doing some beers, and William will be doing some of that as well, you know, whatever we contribute. And when you see that there's on tap, sometimes 6 things on tap at Great Northern War, plus bottled stuff that I'm bringing from the various meads and things that I'm making, you can have pretty much whatever you like. There's the guys who like their dark beers, the guys who like their light beers, the people who like the flavoured ciders, the people who like the dry ciders. It's all there. It's all on tap, all the meads. You know, it's great. Great Northern War, fantastic. Lots of, once again, a lot of fun, and it's all just there. And the actual the Jolly Duke as a household has been given the Pride of Lochac, which is the household-based award. I don't know, I happened to be there at the time and sort of got in amongst that, but really it's sort of Alaric and Drake who really set it up, and then William and I have come into it over the last few years to contribute. But it's a great thing to be a part of. A lot of fun things to do. You know, mass quantities of cider doesn't bother me at all. Just churn it out, and then bring the bottled meads and things. It's all great. So, oh, and look, we're on a plane again. Who would know? It was a constant feature, and we had a lot of fun with that. And that was going to the Crown Tournament, the last Crown Tournament, November Crown 2019. That was tricky. Like our flight was cancelled because of the bushfires, and we managed to get onto a flight the day of the tournament. I walked onto site. The four of us all together walked onto site and put our armour on and walked into implication. That's how tight we ran it. It was bad.
Wow.
Flying in over Sydney, everything was on fire.
Mm.
Just astounding.
It's heart-wrenching.
Yeah, the introduction from Stefan was fabulous. Cormac was there again, and Stefan really got into his face, like literally face to face with him, sort of doing the whole, you've been trash talking Ianto will get you, all this sort of stuff. And because I mentioned during the invocation that this marked the 10th coronet or crown tournament that I had entered, the 10th. And wouldn't you believe it, that got me onto the king's side. And wouldn't you believe it, Cormac was up very early in the challenges, and he had to challenge me. So it was all set up. It was all set up for the grudge match to go again. And wouldn't you know it, he beat me again. This was the first one since I'd been back into armor and back into crown tournaments, where it was double elimination, and I was out in two. So I met Cormac, did a great job. He got me, and then I met Sir Oz, and Sir Oz, once again, the knights here, they don't mess about. So he gave me a bit of discipline. So it was pretty good. Yeah, but that's the way it is. So I probably should talk a bit about brewing.
Okay.
So to give you some idea, I'm really well set up. When we came to the house that we're in now, it was a little house, and we extended it. And when we extended it, we built another kitchen in the extension, and we kept the original kitchen as the brewery laundry. And so this is the original kitchen, set up, getting ready for me to put a brew together. So this is a methaglin that I'm putting together here. Ginger, fresh picked from the garden, rosemary, fresh from the garden, honey from a local supplier, macadamia honey, very good.
Wow.
And so putting it together. And I'm definitely now getting into this whole concept of document as you go. So you can put it up in a Facebook forum or on a web page or something like that. So you can show people exactly what it is that you did to get to where you are with what you've got. So showing you how much I had, how I pulled it apart, chopped up, washed, all this, how much I was putting in, all there, the process in the pots all together, doing that to get the honey in there infused with the flavor, the use of what yeasts, what nutrients, the use of oak staves to give flavor. So all of these things are things that I've learned over the years. These really help a brew to be tasty and good. Sterilize everything, clean, clean, clean. You'll notice the little H written on that vat. That means this vat has been used for honey.
Mm.
I have some friends who are violently allergic to honey. And so I separate out, has it been used for beer, which means it's got hops? I know another person who's violently allergic to hops. So there's the stuff that's touched hops, there's the stuff that's touched honey, there's the stuff that's just for cider. They're all marked, they're all used separately. So sieving out the mixture into the vat, taking a specific gravity reading, important part of the process so you can tell how much alcohol is in it and in the vat. And so now I'm trying to make it that every time I do a batch, this little photo sequence is done every time. I do it in an annual Facebook album. The particular things are put into the Facebook album and they come out and they're published. If I remember to, I'll cross-post them into the Lochac brewers, and I also put them onto my own web page as well. So it's all about document as you go. Make sure you've got reasonable documentation that somebody else can follow it. And so then when people say, have you got a recipe for X? I will go, this page. And that's what I'm trying to do today, to try to support those other people that are wanting to do things and also to keep going. And so with the various brews, these meads and melomels. So on the left, there's my signature blackcurrant melomel. I make that every year now. In August, it turns over. It's like I take it out of the vat, bottle it, I clean the vat, sterilize the vat, and the new batch goes in. It all happens within a weekend. And that will sit there for a year. The other one, the mead type one, that's been going now. That particular one is probably, I'm thinking about bottling it soon. So the meads, methaglins, and that sort of stuff, I'll let them go for about 3 or 4 months, and then they're bottled. And you make about 30 something bottles at a time when I'm doing that. And that's why that rack has got so much on it. I have 500 bottles of stuff on the racks around the house. Most of it's on the rack that's in the photograph we saw earlier. It's about 450, 460 on there currently. And there's a few in the back room on another set of shelves.
Wow.
So I can pull a dozen out at any given time, put them in a box, go to an event. People seem quite conscious that they're drinking my supply. They need to get over that. If I bring a dozen and come home with a dozen empties, good job.
And it's barely put a dent in your supply.
Well, and just it's all about having the space to roll through the next one and the next one. But because you're sort of pulling a few out from a 30, 35 bottles batch, if I pull 2 of those, 3 of those, 4 of those, whatever, I haven't taken the supply down. So it ages as well. You get to see it across the years.
Yeah.
And the meads particularly, they age really well at full wine strength alcohol content. They're no problem to keep for lengthy periods of time. I have bottles on the racks that are from 1996.
Wow.
Yeah. So, it's you've kind of got to have this. Well, no, you don't have to have this sort of commitment, but if you can, this really helps. Don't muck about with small quantities. If you've got a recipe, experiment in a small quantity, see if it works. Reproduce in quantity, do the 25 liters, because you get a recipe right and it's good, it's just going to get better. And diary page. I got my brew diary. Yeah, there we go. 30 years, nearly 30 years of stuff in there. So I'm on its last couple of pages. It won't quite make 30 years before it's full. And if you are brewing, definitely keep a diary. I don't jump around a lot of different things. I don't necessarily experiment an awful lot, because for me, it's about figure a recipe out, get the recipe right, do it again and again and again. It gets tweaked as you learn new things. The use of oak, the use of oak staves, the toasted oak staves, that's more recent, definitely makes a difference. It's like it's been stored in a barrel. So it's a lot, you learn as you go. But when you can do something good, do it good. And there we go. We're sort of at the end of the photo reel.
So before we started, you asked me to remind you about a conversation that you had with a Western Australian brewer, and that related to a recipe that is rooted in the indigenous community. Yes.
Yeah. So when I was over at Western Australia sometime, a lady presented a spiced rum at one of the events, and she challenged us to pick the ingredients that were in it. So she'd spiced up a commercially bought rum with various things. Now I'll tell you, I'm particularly bad at doing this. I cannot tell exactly what all the herbs and spices are in something. However, I definitely can tell that they've got the balance right. You taste it and it's just glorious. So she presented us with this rum. So Stefan got to have some, I got to have some, a few other people around got to have some, and we were all trying to figure out what was in it. And a few of us managed to get pretty close to the mark. Not me. I just knew she'd got it right. And it was lovely. So, thank you very much. That's fine. The next day, because it was a multi-day event, I think it must have been one of the Crowns, and she came to me a little bit more surreptitiously and said, "Would you like to taste this one?" Right? And I said, "For sure, that spiced rum was fantastic." And she sort of said, "Give it a taste." And I gave it a taste, and it was incredible. Just the most magnificent thing that had been across my palate. It was so subtle in the various sort of spices and things, and I had no idea what they were. And she said, everything that's in it is from the West Australian bush. And she learnt this recipe from an Indigenous elder. And she got to have that access because she had been in the US and had some contact with the Indigenous people there, and the respect for the land and the respect for the plants and the respect for the process of harvesting had been instilled in her there. And when she went out in the bush, she thanked the plants. She did, it was the whole process. She'd taken that on board. She was an educator for one of the mining companies, and there's quite a few Indigenous community members who participate in mining, and she was supposed to be giving health and safety training, and she had quite some difficulty because there was an almost a false respect for a woman who is training the Indigenous men. It was the whole kind of, I think she used the phrase, yes, Mrs. And it was kind of almost dismissive, and she was having quite some trouble. And then she was approached by one of the elders sort of saying, "I saw you out in the bush and I saw you thanking the plants. You are paying proper respect to the land. Is there anything I can help you with?" And she said, "Yes, I'm having trouble with the people when I'm trying to teach them." And he said, I think I can help you with that. Come to this location this night and we'll do something about that. And this community leader inducted her as an elder.
Wow.
And all her problems disappeared because she was then effectively the respected chain of people. And then later, that elder gave her the recipe for this drink she had given me. And so it's a steeped native plants in alcohol. Now, alcohol isn't necessarily great for our Indigenous community, but they know how to make things work when it comes to stuff from the bush. And this was divine, absolutely divine. Recipe utterly secret, utterly. And I tasted it and I thought, this is just so good. And I mulled over this, it just hit my mind going, this is important. It really, really is. So later I approached her and I sort of said, "Look, I'm not asking you for the recipe. I understand entirely the trust relationship you have with the community, and I am not asking you for this recipe. What I want you to do, if you would be so kind, is to go to the elder and say, under what circumstances am I allowed to pass the recipe on? Because it mustn't be lost."
Yeah.
It's just so good. And I don't know what the outcome was, but she said she just never even thought of it like that. She was sworn to secrecy, and she took that seriously, and as do I. But it mustn't be lost. And the whole thing around history and everything, it mustn't be lost. I mean, we have had some discussions as we've sort of been preparing for this interview, where you've said that the interviews have brought out pieces of history that just, where did that come from? Where did that photograph come from? Where did this come from? I didn't know that, and this mustn't be lost. And these sorts of things with internet publishing and all that sort of stuff, they are going to help in that regard. But the other thing that has been on my mind because I work in sort of technology and information technology is people are sort of banding around the term, it's on the internet, it is forever. Right? I would suggest that there's a point at which this is not correct because the technology changes quite rapidly and the basis of that technology can lead things to be lost. And I think probably the best example for that is the incredible challenge that our web rights face as the technologies move to not lose the stuff that was presented on site X's pages as they try to bring it up to modern technologies. And I've definitely found some incidents where I've been trying to keep my own sort of personal history and in some sort of form because I'm really bad with dates. And so by putting it on some pages, on a web page of a service that I pay for, has been tremendously helpful. It has helped get me prepared for this interview. My brew diary and all of the things are all on there on one of those pages. And so it's really, really helpful. But I completely recognize that if I stop paying for that service, it's all gone.
Right.
And any links to it that somebody else may be using, it's all gone. Right? And I had links to other sites on my page, and some of those I was trying to follow through to help put together things to speak with you about. And those links are broken. They are gone. And so I think we need to try to figure out some way for the SCA as a whole to have a way in which we move with the times, we move with the technology, and we can keep these things that we've found, you've found, and these kinds of interviews to show the history. How do we keep them long term? Yeah. I mean, Rowan, who is just such a stalwart in Lochac, has recently been talking about, she wants to put some things online with her own sort of pages and her own pattern. I'm not sure what she's going to put, but it's going to be awesome, just the nature of what she does. And I kind of commented on a sort of a thread to her, are you sure it's all going to be okay and it's going to last? And she was saying it's going to be on her own server. And I'm going, well, yes, because her partner is technologically extremely savvy, and I don't doubt that it will be awesome, but there's no guarantee long term that on a server in their house that it will be available. And I'm thinking long term.
Right.
We've just gone through the best part of 30 years of a personal history. It's been, like I've said before, a self-indulgent trip down memory lane for me to talk to you, right? But that's a long time to be keeping things together, and some of it I just happen to have accessible to me on computers because I'm a computer literate person and I've got sort of mass storage devices and all this sort of thing. But it's not necessarily forever. And knowing how we came to where we are today, it is important. And I don't, how do we keep it? I don't have an answer.
Right.
But I just think, can some cleverer and potentially younger people than me think about that a bit, about how to preserve things as you move through the technologies? Who knows what the next storage medium thing is going to be, and are we going to transfer everything over? The internet is a constantly moving thing. Here we are using a technology that was hardly used at all for a while, and now there's 5 of them, and I've got 5 things installed to allow me to do a conversation across the world with someone via video.
With no lag.
Yeah, well, thank goodness that my internet has stayed stable. That was my biggest fear, that it would blow up in my face. Yeah, but what? It does bother me a little bit.
Yeah. I am not a tech person. I barely. We had to teach ourselves a lot to do these interviews, and we continue to learn. I couldn't get closed captioning to work tonight, So I don't have an answer for that, but I hope that somebody is watching this, and I hope that that seed gets planted in their brain about,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know.
How do you transfer it? Well, I'm pulling out my tools because it's probably time I had a drink.
Oh, we're
because
gonna open a
because I
bottle.
do brew, and I hope I don't embarrass myself by spilling mead all over myself. This is one of the current batches that was made this year, and I'm very pleased because it's quite drinkable straight away, and I'm very hopeful for it long term because it's pretty nice. So, oh yeah, come on. I am going to embarrass myself. It's typical. I've gone too close to the edge of the cork. There we go. I should have used my other device. This is the one with old corks.
Mm.
It's a vicious piece of gear, this one. Don't get me upset when I'm holding that. And to the talent of our artisans, the crown tournament that was actually the coronation that was held in New Zealand recently, everybody got one of these.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, oh yeah, all hand painted glass.
So your Lochac friends are toasting your day drinking.
Yes, day drinking. Here's to it. Oh yeah.
It's good, huh?
I love it when a plan comes together. There's a bit of citrus in that, so it's got a bit of acidity. I put that in there mostly because the modern palate kind of expects a bit of acidity, but the honey comes out at the end because this is a mead. It's not spiced, but as I say, put a bit of citrus in there to give it a bit of bite. Oh yeah.
Well, awesome. So you're going to be surprised. We've gone 2 hours.
It doesn't really surprise me. You get me started and there's no stopping me. And if we really got started on the whole technicality around brewing, one of the chaps that I get onto with the Pell sessions, he's sort of trying to start up. Actually, his partner's trying to start up with the brewing, and I got talking about, oh, this piece, like he was showing the equipment they bought secondhand, and I'm going, oh yeah, that's one of these, that's one of these, that's one of these. Before we knew it, we'd eaten the time. Just amazing. Yeah,
It's good. It's good.
but I enjoyed very much.
What are your future goals in the SCA? You're working hard on your fighting right now.
Yes, yeah, I really, I mean, in the early part of my career, you will have seen that fighting was pretty important, but in the company that I kept with Sword and Shield, they were just beating me black and blue. And I'm not a fan of the whole, you learn if you get beaten black and blue. No, you learn if you're trained.
Right.
And it stuns me that some people have come to great success having been hurt, to the point of tears repeatedly. I feel this is, I'm not a fan.
That's the tradition that my sister and I started fighting under, and I peace out on that. I couldn't do it, but my sister came up through that tradition.
And power to her. That's just incredible. And so, having not gone terribly well with Sword and Shield, I switched to Glaive and really took on that sort of supporting role in group situations, and that was very successful. And when you've got people who know how to work together in multi-person scenarios, hence multiple Buttoney crosses and that sort of thing, they're team events. And you'll probably often sort of get this sort of feel that I have followed people at a particular time. Mm-hmm. Somebody at one point sort of said to other people, what the really good thing about Ianto is when it comes to war units? And people go, oh, he's really good with this, or he's really good with that. And he went, no, he does as he's told. And that's the thing. I'm completely comfortable in myself. I have skills that are mine, that I'm very, very good at. But when it comes to circumstances where it's better for me to be the follower, I will be the follower. And I will be the follower to the best of my ability. And so that's where in household, in war unit, in all those sorts of things, in the Jolly Duke, Drake controls that. That's his thing. I am there to support him to do the best job possible at the events that the Jolly Duke serves bar. So he will say what it is. I will do what he wants, because that's the way to make huge success.
Yeah.
Right? I was there when the Pride of Lochac was given to the Jolly Duke. That's really Drake and Alaric's work. Right? I'm happy to share in it. I'm a subordinate person. Yes, I'm a Laurel. He's a Laurel. I was Laurel before he was Laurel. Who cares? We're
Right.
doing good works together. Right? And that's what makes life great. We enjoy ourselves. It's fabulous. The beer, the wine, the cider, it's all there. Let's do it. Let's have a good time. Let's have the strengths of any of the people that we have brought into the society. You enjoy this, you should do this. Right? And by the way, you can do this with these three guys or these three ladies, or we can dance and sing and play. And what do you love? What is great? Get into it.
Yeah. And how can I
some
facilitate you doing that thing?
Yeah.
So
don't
awesome.
be hesitant to give it a try.
Awesome. Well, we are over 2 hours, so we should probably call it a night.
Yeah, for sure.
Is there anything that we didn't cover that you want to cover, or have we done a pretty thorough job, do you think?
I think we've been pretty thorough. Do you want to ask me final questions?
That's kind of my sister's gig.
Yeah.
I've tried doing final questions with Laurels. So I guess I do have a couple of final questions. If money was no object, is there an art or a piece of equipment that you would pursue within the SCA?
I mean, I would seriously go after a microbrewery in full, the whole thing. I keep it all the time at the back of my mind. There are a couple of brewers in Lochac who are doing the brewing professionally, and it fascinates me. The process to get things together, to have the brewery equipment together enough to do it in that sort of quantity. I'm seriously thinking about, I do things nearly always in 25 litres at a time. I'm seriously considering going up to 50 litres at a time every time.
Wow.
And then you're not far away from what the microbreweries do. You just need a little bit more equipment and a better environment, I think. So
a labeling machine and some marketing.
Well, yeah, yes. That's right. I mean, hand glued on labels. Yeah. There are a few things that would be pretty good to have. Yeah.
And is there, again, money's no object, time's not an object. Is there an art that you would like to learn other than brewing? If you could go back and spend that 30 years becoming a master at something or following that path?
I mean, with the keen interest I have in the fighting, the armor, I'm so fortunate to have the support of friends who know how to make the armor. Perhaps for myself to be able to do that would be something. And there is some beautiful work going on at the moment. The raised work, Felix is trying to get the raised work to happen, and I hope that the piece that was stolen from him turns up, because it was not complete, and you've got to be crushed when someone took that. Yeah. But I hope he continues, because that sort of thing is just magnificent. Yeah, and I mean, there are artisans that are doing it now, and you look at it and go, that's spectacular, such work.
Yeah, it's really interesting work. Okay, and then lastly, is there a place where you would want to travel to learn more of your art?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I don't know that there's very many places that do the mead consistently. So I don't know of anywhere that I could go that actually really does mead to traditional things. But certainly some of the wine regions where you could go back to places that have been there since the medieval period. That would be fascinating to see.
Yeah.
What they had, if they've kept some of the original kind of location and infrastructure up to, if they're still in production today, what was their journey for over the centuries to get to where they are today, to still be working? And some of the monasteries as well. Whilst I'm not a beer maker, the process still fascinates me. And whoever thought that you put rocks on a fire and it has to be birch, and then you put those rocks into a malted material so that they get covered in sugar, and then you put that sugar coated rocks in the bottom of a vat and put another malt on top and brew that and get something that's magnificent to drink. Who thought that up?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think about how these things developed, and like, was it a mistake? And yeah,
potentially so. Some of these things are discovered by accident. So yeah, so those are the kinds of places that I think that have got the history. So you can look back at what they did do, and if they're still operational, what they are doing today. Because there's a lot. We're very concerned about our health today. I think rightly so. So we're very careful, and that's very important.
Yeah. Well, hopefully someday soon we'll be able to travel again.
We have more borders open than closed at the moment here in Lochac, and I consider us to be very, very fortunate.
Yeah. We are in dire straits.
I really hope that things can improve for you as it goes. And I showed you sort of the picture of Sir Sebastian earlier. He's also an interesting figure because that puts quite a few of us who know him 2 degrees of separation from Joe Biden.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he was introduced at the lab to Sir Sebastian, because he's an eminent research scientist.
Oh, how exciting. That's really cool.
He's very, very clever man. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time tonight. I really enjoyed it. And it is kind of Lochac week a little bit this week. My sister and I are going to be interviewing Duke Eric, who was kind of one of the founding people of Antir, reigned twice early on in Antir, and now lives in Lochac. I'm not even sure what state he lives in.
Yeah.
I guess we'll find out tomorrow.
My enjoyable experience with him was where I was at a tournament that I showed the photograph of myself when I'd gone on to Eva's Guard. There was a tournament held at that particular event, which I participated in, which was a challenge tournament, and points were based on the rank of the person that you challenged, and you got bonus points if you defeated them. So I had Eric in my sights and the King and Queen in my sights and all that sort of stuff. And he very quickly realized that if I came anywhere near him, he would foil my plan if he challenged me.
Oh,
because I was worth a point, not a squire. Laurels didn't count. I wasn't a knight. You were worth more points the higher up the fighting ranking system you went. So I was worth next to nothing, and he was worth 10, I think, or 8 or something like that.
He's tricksy.
So I needed to get the challenge out before he got the challenge out. And actually, and that said, that was the best performance in a tournament I've ever done. I came second.
Oh, congratulations. That's wonderful.
It was stacked in favor of those people who were willing to stay out long enough and hit long enough and challenge high. And I'm not hesitant about challenging high. And the gentleman who won it by a country mile. He really, he blitzed it.
Wow.
He really went out hard. Yeah.
Wow. Well, thank you again. And thanks everyone for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Have a great day.